My gavel's not too loud. Welcome everyone to the full commission day. We're going to start off with our invocation and pledge of allegiance, and I've asked Henry County Officer Greg Barker if he would come up and lead us in a prayer and pledge.
Thank you. Would you join us as we pray? Father, we gather this morning to discuss wildlife resources here in the great state of Tennessee. And Father, we need your guidance, the issues and challenges we're facing as a state. We really could use your wisdom and discernment as we go forward. And Father, I thank you for your love for us that is shown through Christ Jesus. I thank you for your mercy, your grace, and I thank you for the men and women of our commission, Father, that you've given them a passion and a desire to serve us here in Tennessee. And I would pray for discernment for them and wisdom for them. I pray for their families as they're away from them each month. And Father, I lift them up to you. I pray for our TWRA family, Father, those of us who you've given a calling to again, serve and protect the resources that you so richly blessed us with here in Tennessee. And Father, we lift up our director, Mr. Ed Carter. He's traveling today, so Father, we would pray for travel mercy upon him. And again, Father, thank you for your love for us, and it's in the strong and powerful name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Would you join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Greg, very much. Danette, would you call the roll, please?
Dennis Gardner. Here. Jimmy Granberry. Here. Steve Jones. Here. Connie King. Here. Jim Ripley. Here. Tony Sanders. Here. James Stroud. Here. Kent Woods. Here. Tommy Woods. Here. Hank Wright. Angie Box. Here. Brian McLaren. Here. Kurt Holbert.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Got a few special guests here today I want to recognize. Well, I said special. I should have introduced Mike Butler before I said special. Anyway, Mike Butler with the Tennessee Wildlife Federation. Kim Wilson, where you at, Kim? One of the commission's best friends, period. So thank you for being here, Kim. Mr. and Mrs. Dyes from the Tennessee Fur Harvesters Association. Jenna Cole Wilson, Director of Benton County Chamber of Commerce, and the one that came up with the carp contest. I can't jump fish. All right, got you. So she has really done well coming up with that project. She called, and one of the best ideas I'd heard in a long time. So, and also we have two other really special guests because they're commissioners' wives, and what an awesome place to take your wife to Paris. I mean, what other commission? I mean, it's pretty special. So anyway, Tammy Woods, who is Tommy Woods' wife, and Kinda Sanders, who is Tony's wife. So I did get asked if I knew how to pronounce Kinda's name, and I said, well, that's how we say kind of in West Tennessee. It's kind of sad or kind of. So anyway, but Tony,
I appreciate her coming in. Like was said, we go away a lot, and when I told her I was coming to Paris, she was excited to go. When I left off Tennessee part, and much like Commissioner Tommy Woods, and the fact that they're sitting together even makes it worse. I'm going to end up leaving a lot of my money in Henry County to atone for my slip of the tongue or the lack of using Tennessee at the end of Paris. So thank you, though.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. All right. I do need a motion. You've got on your iPads the minutes from our February meeting. I do need a motion for approval. no idea what that was.
I'll make a motion.
All right, do I hear a second? All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Motion approved. Did I forget anything, Danette? Wow. Notice I didn't ask Tracy. I hear you. All right. I'm going to call on our Chief of Multimedia, Don King.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to get up here and preview a little bit some of the public service announcements we've been able to do with some celebrities, thanks to Commissioner Stroud. We appreciate Chairman Stroud's opening up his Rolodex. That dates me, I know, but using his contacts from the years gone by and most recent years, and being able to reach out to some of these folks that he's developed a personal relationship with over the years, and having them come on board, and I don't think it's been he hasn't had to do a lot of arm twisting, as far as I know. He hasn't relayed any of that to me. Just all he had to do was ask, and we appreciate him making that ask. One of the first ones we want to do is a friend of the agency, Mr. Charlie Daniels, Tennessee icon, and Rich is going to cue this up and play this first spot for us. We've got a little bit of light pollution in here. With
I'm Charlie Daniels. When I was a kid, I looked.
That's all right. A little bit of light pollution with all the overhead lights, and it looks a lot better on the TV when you'll see it at home or on the web. So we'll let Rich get this moved over here, and we'll get it going for you in just a second. We were able to go out to his studio, set up, and our team shot these, and Mr. Todd Mazzaris edited these for us, and appreciate his efforts. But anyway, we'll hit go here on this one.
Hi, I'm Charlie Daniels. When I was a kid, I loved baseball and football and all kind of stuff, but my favorite pastime was when my daddy would get me up early in the morning. We'd go hunting or fishing. Out in the fresh air, on the water, or back in the woods, and you learn a lot. You got kids, take them hunting, take them fishing. Join me. Buy a hunting or fishing license. Let's keep wildlife in Tennessee. That's a doggone good thing.
Buy your license today at GoOutdoorsTennessee.com. And I think we've got one more from Charlie that's a little bit long. That's a 30-second spot. That'll run on Pandora. And I've been working with Jennifer. She's been in contact with the Comcast folks to select some certain channels that we want to communicate with the audience on Comcast subscribers. And so that'll be one of the spots that we'll be using on there as well. And this one is a little bit longer. This one wasn't constrained to the 30 seconds, so we'll be able to use this on social media and some other outlets that aren't necessarily restrained to 30-second spots.
Hi, I'm Charlie Daniels. I saw a bald eagle right here in the state of Tennessee the other day, and it made me mighty proud to live in a state that takes that good care of its wildlife. Did you know that our Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency receives no general fund tax dollars? That's right. Hunters and fishermen have paid for wildlife conservation through purchasing license in our state. If you appreciate our healthy population of deer, turkeys, songbirds, eagles, fish, and everything else with fur and feathers on it, thank a hunter or a fisherman. Better yet, purchase a license this year along with one of the beautiful collector's cards. It's a great investment in Tennessee's wildlife. Let's keep it around.
Buy your license today at GoOutdoorsTennessee.com. And we'll move to our next artist, Mr. Trace Kix Brooks. We'll do Kix here next. Kix was so accommodating. All we had to do is send him the script, and he and his team put this together. So they put this in the teleprompter, and Kix did a great job on this one. We've got a couple of versions with Kix too. Here's an example of one of them.
Hello, Tennessee. I'm Kix Brooks. You know, whenever Ronnie and I aren't on tour, there's a good chance you'll find us fishing or hunting. It's a great way to relax and connect with the ones you love. Maybe even challenge yourself a little. But before you follow that red dirt road to your favorite fishing hole or hunting spot, there's one thing you need, a license. Just visit GoOutdoorsTennessee.com and you can get your license in minutes. That's GoOutdoorsTennessee.com.
And we'll follow that with Tracy Lawrence. We got to go over to the studio where he records his honky tonk radio show that's syndicated across the country, and it's the same studio where Big D and Bubba do their show from. If you're familiar with their show, over in Melrose area of Nashville. So we set up and did this spot with Tracy. We got several with him as well, and we even got some safe boating spots with Tracy. We won't be able to play all those today, but we do have some of those that we've even put out for the radio already. They've already used the Charlie Daniels and the Tracy spots on our radio PSA. So anyway, here's a Tracy Lawrence spot.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lawrence, just letting you know that the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency supports itself and manages all of the state's wildlife with the dollars invested by hunters and fishermen when they buy licenses. If you've never bought a license, but appreciate the abundant wildlife we enjoy in this state, I encourage you to do it. Start with the Type 01. It's a great investment in Tennessee wildlife. Learn more at tnwildlife.org.
Buy your license today at GoOutdoorsTennessee.com. That's all I have for today, but just wanted to give you a little preview, and thanks again to Commissioner Stroud.
Just a little bit.
Sure.
First of all, our friend Don King, the way some of this stuff happened, I believe I called you at maybe 6:30 in the morning because I talked to Tracy, and he said, we got to do it now.
Yes.
And I think I woke the man up, and so he pulled that off. And thank you to Jennifer too for the treatments, the scripts and stuff. It's very good. So we've been talking about this for about a year now. We're starting to implement it. We're going to do these in fours, okay? 4 artists. We had Reba, which would have been our 4th one, but she did she got called to do the ACMs and she hosted that. So Reba's next. We have Clint Black coming up, Ronnie Dunn, and we split Brooks and Dunn because of the effect, because Ronnie can talk about Kix can talk about Ronnie. We got one other iconic artist by himself that's giving us a little more heft. Let's see, Luke Bryan, John Anderson. Those are that's our next batch. And Don is right, we've had no problems really at all with asking these people. They're, first of all, they're good friends, but secondly, it's a good cause. And be proud of what we do right here, because every one of these artists are eager to do it because of the reputation of TWRA. And they have to be very careful as to what they endorse, as we all know. And they have to be careful with what their fan base thinks about them. So the way this is going, we're not going after hunting where you'd have a fan base that might be upset with the artist. You're going after it with the way they do it as far as your scripts and stuff, which is working out great. So I think over the next probably year, we'll probably end up with maybe 15 or 20 of iconic artists. Our next batch is going to be, after this, is going to be some of the newer artists. But quite honestly, the newer artists that are happening right now, they just don't have a high Q. They're not known like Reba. They're not known like Charlie. And so you have iconic artists, and that was our intention to make this relevant, so that when you do ask the newer artist, or you have these kids that are coming up, they'll want to jump on it because they're iconic artists that they're involved in, and the people that they respect. already in. So that's our plan. That's how we're doing it. Again, these guys are doing great. We're going to just continue doing this. May should be another batch of artists. So hats off to you and Jennifer and our little crew and us for our reputation. It's good. It makes it easy. So thank you very much. I think it's going to be good for us.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else got any questions for Don before he heads out? All right. You can say all you want to about
I'm going to say one other thing. Don King, and I keep bragging on him, but most of these artists will not allow a piece that they do or anything they do without their own crew, without their own people. And Kix, of course, did it because he's set up. But everybody that I asked, they know Don from the music days, but they also trust his people. And so when Charlie did his, and Tracy did his, and these people here, I mean, Reba, she trusts you, she knows you, and anyway, we really have a good representative to do and follow up and to have some really nice, high-end, high-quality work. So thank you, Don. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Stroud. No other questions? All right. I'm going to call on Lieutenant Colonel Cape Taylor. Yesterday, Lieutenant Colonel Taylor presented the Proclamation 1902, Manner and Means. It amended Proclamation 18-05, Manner and Means. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Yes, sir, Chairman. The Wildlife Committee met yesterday and recommend passage of it. I make a motion to pass Proclamation 1902 as written.
Okay. Do I hear a second? All right. Any discussion from members of the commission? Any questions from the public or comments? If not, all in favor of Proclamation 1902 that amends Proclamation -1805, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Lieutenant Taylor. You did a good job. All right. Next, I'm going to call on Jamie Fedderson. Yesterday, Jamie Fedderson, our waterfowl coordinator, presented a budget expansion, or asked for a budget expansion, 2023 in the amount of $1.4 million. It'd be 100% federal funds. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee met yesterday and make a motion that this be passed as presented.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from members of the commission? Any member of the public got a comment? Question? All right. If not, all in favor of budget expansion FY 2023, the amount of $1.4 million, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Hey, I do have one thing to say to him. Sorry about this.
It's perfectly fine.
Can you
But we have already voted, so.
Yeah, and this is just, this has nothing to do with the vote. It's the reason I didn't bring it up before. I would just like, when you get the information that tells like the ratio of the birds that you're doing, a retrieval of the, downed or fallen, transmitters, I would just like to have that information probably the whole commission want it, but I'm intrigued just because I'm an avid duck hunter, really.
Absolutely. Well, once I get with Dr. Cohen and we hammer out some further details on this, and we get the graduate students on board, we'll know exactly what the plan is. I'd say
Yeah, I'd just like to know
probably
some details of it.
by September we'll have those details easily hammered out. So
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah.
Thanks, Shane. The main thing, we would like you to let the commission know exactly where the ducks are going.
Right. Don't worry. You all will know where we're going to be doing it and when we're going to be doing it. We're actually going to need a small army of people to handle all these birds that we capture.
Oh, we can handle the birds.
So yeah, I'm expecting some cooperation from members of the commission.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Also yesterday, Jamie presented the budget expansion FY20 for Three Rivers WMA. It's in the amount of $450,000. It's all federal funds, and Ducks Unlimited is contributing $150,000. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee met and make a motion that this be passed as presented yesterday.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. Do I hear a second? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Members of the commission? Any questions or comments from the public? All right. If not, all in favor of budget expansion FY20 in the amount of $450,000, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you,
Mr.
Jamie.
Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners.
Is Tim Churchill here today? Okay. All right. Yesterday, Tim asked for a budget expansion. FY19, it's $130,000. It will be going to the Montgomery County shooting range. It'd be no licensed dollars, and 100% federal funds. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee met and make a motion that this be passed as presented in committee yesterday.
Do I hear a second? Second from Commissioner King. Any discussion from members of the commission? Any questions or comments from the public? If not, all in favor of budget expansion FY19 for the amount of $130,000, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Jennifer, you don't have. You can come up in case there's a question. Jennifer W. yesterday presented budget expansion FY19-21 for the amount of $750,000 for the Learn to Hunt and Learn to Fish program. It's 100% federal funds with a match to be provided by the Tennessee Wildlife Federation. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, believe it or not, the Budget Committee met on this subject yesterday as well.
Ooh, y'all are busy.
And recommend in the form of a motion that this be passed as presented in committee.
Do I hear a second? Second. All right. Have a motion and a second from Commissioner Granberry on the second. Is there any discussion from members of the commission? Any question or comment from the public? If not, all in favor of budget expansion FY19-21, the amount of $750,000, let it be known by saying aye. Motion carried. Very well done, Commissioner Sanders. Let's see. Before...
Is it my imagination, or is this like the fastest meeting ever? It's not over yet. Shh.
Okay. Ken Tarkington, our financial report. Also, I'm going to warn Ken. I'm going to. Me and Commissioner Sanders talked, and we're going to start doing the financial report on committee day during budget committee. So, just a heads up.
Well, traditionally, I'm last and least on the last day, but
And we're making it more important.
Chris follows me up, so
Yep.
I feel blessed. Thank you. Got a lot of stuff up here. For you new commissioners, I am Ken Tarkington. I'm the Chief of Budget, procurement, and MVM. Those are my main responsibilities. And traditionally each month I report to you the financial status, both income and expense, for the 4 major funds we have, and the 2, as Finance Administration calls them, permanent funds. They are actually endowments. I'll report to you on both wildlife and boating and their reserve and how their reserve is affected. The 2 wetlands accounts, there's one for acquisition, which is the account we use to purchase wetlands properties and maintain properties that the state owns, and the in lieu of tax called the compensation, Wetlands Compensation Fund. And that's where we pay the counties for in lieu of tax payments for those properties that were taken off their tax rolls when we purchased them through the Wetlands Acquisition Fund. The 2 endowment funds we have are the lifetime license and the watchable wildlife. Both of these are set by law. We can use interest on them, but currently that's all we can do. In your book on your iPad, somehow you should have a 3-page report, and I'm reporting through the month of February. Traditionally, we don't report to you on a month until Finance and Administration, Department of Finance and Administration closes that month. They've just closed March, but we haven't had enough time to review it and reconcile it. So I'm reporting to you on the month of February. There is one other caveat on the very last sheet, and I'll get to it in a minute. As of October of 2015, we were able to piggyback onto the State of Tennessee Treasurer's investment portfolio and invest some of the reserve funds of the boating, wildlife, and the endowment funds in order to earn a higher, I hate to say interest because it's not really interest, until the investments don't come due until they're sold. And some are on 10 months, some are on 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, that sort of thing. What I report to you each month is the value of those investments. And it's somewhat similar to a stock. Stock rises, you have an increase in the value. The stock lowers, you have a decrease in that value. Doesn't mean you've lost or gained anything. It just means at that point in time, that's the value of it. Okay, after having said enough of that, the first page at the top, I'm reporting on the boating fund through the month February, and the actual amount received, thus compared against same point in time last year, is approximately 2.2% above where it was in February of the year before. The expenses approximate 36% of the allotment for the year. The middle of the page, the Wildlife Fund, is approximately 0.2% ahead of the same point in time last year. You'll notice a lot of swings on the monthly amounts, and especially in the Wildlife Fund, you see a bracket figure there in February, $346,000. We've had adjustments through this year in correcting some entries that were made this year and some entries that were made last year to bring them forward. Our accounting folks do those, and we feel not that there won't be further adjustments in future months, but perhaps not quite as large. The expenditures on the Wildlife Fund approximate 47% of the allotment. At the bottom of the page, the 2 endowments, the Watchable Wildlife has $6.5 million, and available interest that can be transferred is $14.4, and the Lifetime Sportsman Endowment has approximately $53 million in it. On the second page, the Wetlands Acquisition Fund, this is where we purchase the wetlands acquisitions and maintain the properties, has a balance of $12.8 million. We separate the maintenance out so you can see that degree of effort. We zero it out because it's all included in the same fund. So you'll probably see a zero balance there each month, and that's why. At the bottom of the page, the compensation fund, that's the in lieu of tax fund, has approximately $893,000. Traditionally, we pay the counties at the end of the fiscal year around the May timeframe for the prior year's in lieu of taxes. They have to be certified by the comptroller's office and forward from there to the Department of General Services to come to us to pay. And that's why many counties, or some counties in some cases, feel they should or have questions on when those payments will be made. As soon as we receive those certifications, we pay them. It takes 2 to 3 days to pay them and about another 4 or 5 days for Finance Administration to review and approve those to get those warrants or checks to the counties. The third page, final page, is the statement of the investments that we have. The Treasury is able to close their books much quicker. I usually receive about the second or third of each month the prior month's statements. This one is for the end of March. And overall, for the prior month, for the month of March, the investments increased by 0.81%. And you can see at the very bottom on the left, it's awfully small print, I realize, but the current market value of the investments are almost $69.5 million. Did I tell you a whole lot more than you want to know? Have any questions, comments? I won't be as long-winded in the future. I just thought it might be helpful for the new folks to kind of get a perspective of what our funds are and where they are and so forth.
No. It is very helpful. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, I've got a few other things before I'm going to get you. I'm going to do it before the rulemaking. I've got a couple of commissioners that's got questions. I'm going to ask Lieutenant Colonel Kate Taylor, because he'll be the one to answer this, to come up. Commissioners, yeah. Commissioner Stroud, I'm going to recognize you.
I was just talking about to Connie about the complaints that we're starting to get on, for instance, Reelfoot, with the airboats at night, doing the bow fishing from the residents, that it's just really loud. I was over there this past weekend, and they're right. It's a lot of racket and stuff, and they're complaining about it, and there's some concerns about it. So Connie was just saying the same thing, and I think you, Kurt, had gotten the same. We're getting a lot of complaints about the noise, and I don't know what you do as far as regulating that, and maybe there's a cutoff time, or maybe there's a distance. I'm not sure, but I would like for you to comment on it, and so I can give some answers. And I don't know what we need to do about it, but I just wanted to bring that up today so we can start looking at that situation, Gabe.
I'll give you the best answers that we have, and I'll look to Colonel Ryder as well. He's got a vast voting background, and with our general counsel. The noise statute is in TCA code, and it talks about certain amounts of decibels, and I can't quote it off the top of my head, but you set up a track, and you have a decibel meter, and the boat runs by you. You have them run this course to see how loud they are. That's all about mufflers and being muffled by water and things like that. It doesn't really address the airboat noise. So really, we don't have anything in place at this point. We get a lot of those complaints too. And I worked in that Nashville district where Percy Priest and Old Hickory, and you have a lot of houses on Old Hickory surrounding, and we got a lot of complaints about the light shining in our windows at 2 a.m. and the motor noise and all of this, the generators, all that stuff. So it's an issue that really we don't have a great answer to, because all the noise statute is all about motorboats that are running with an outboard instead of the otherwise. So I don't know how to turn to this. Darren, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I'm sorry. I stepped out to take a call.
Yeah, Cape's right, Commissioner. The code allows for engine noise. Doesn't allow for that fan. The fans is what's making the noise on those boats. And this is not just a isolated Tennessee incident. In talking with my counterparts in Texas, Louisiana, and Florida especially, they deal with this, but it's kind of a bad place to be. So what we do, we try to educate these folks that are airboat owner operators. If they're going to do some tournaments or fishing, you know, be respectful and mindful that these neighborhoods that pop up, lakeside, shoreside, to be conscious and be respectful of, they're trying to sleep and all that above. So the good, more reputable operators, they're conscious of trying to keep that noise down during the early and late hours to those homeowners. But we have nothing in the law that deals with the fan making that noise. It's engine noise only.
I get it. So that's the existing law, right?
That is correct.
Is TWRA responsible if we were to decide to look into this? Are we the responsible agency that would regulate it? Are we the ones? Because it's not going to stop. It's getting, and you know, you're getting ready to get into the season.
They're like paddle crap, but they make a lot of noise.
Yeah. Is it our responsibility, or is it up to the TWRA if we decided to look at this and set some regulations and stuff? Or is that a different government agency?
I think that's a discussion.
This is the questions I'm getting.
Yeah.
My questions are from these people. Are you guys going to do anything about it?
I don't know that. I'm seeing Tracy not shake her head no.
No.
It's not probably within our realm.
So our answer to these people would be, we are not the responsible agency. No one is.
What
Okay.
about the other states? What
That's
do you say
interesting.
Florida? Doesn't Florida have something they do?
They don't. There's no restrictions in the Floridas, the Louisianas, and the Texas. It's a group of folks that, if you're an uninspected homeowner buyer in Texas, I'll give you a prime example in Texas. You got a developer that developed a really nice upper scale neighborhood, but the contractor or nobody told them anything that it's on the water. So opening day of waterfowl season at 4 a.m.
Oh, gosh.
Here comes all these airboats to hunt waterfowl in Texas, and it's just a group we have to live with and try to work with and educate them to be considerate of the noise they can make at those odd hours that's not favorable to the homeowner.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say it's a homeowner buyer beware, but we got
Sorta is.
It's a community that we encourage the use of our waters and our resources. So you know, that's kind of where we're at with all this.
Okay.
Well, I'm very sympathetic to them because we have.
Yeah, if they're out there.
It's awful. It's awful in the middle of the night, but
it's a good user group we have.
Maybe we can do some PSAs on that.
Well, you're saying though that we don't have, our answer to these people that are complaining is that we can't.
Nothing we can do.
That's what I need. Okay, that's our answer. Okay, got you.
As long as they got their
We need to
fishing
tell them to
license
call
and
their legislators.
safety equipment, we're good.
I get it. Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Yes, sir.
That's our answer. Thank you.
We regulate no wake zones, do we
Correct.
not? Is there any way that, and I'm not proposing that we do this, we're just thinking out loud today, I guess, but would there be any way to, and would it help to limit the speed that they're traveling in these areas?
Well, that's a slippery slope. Over the past, we've talked about getting all the equipment and radars and whatnot. That's not a good road to go down on our reservoirs and
And I
places.
don't know if that's the problem.
It's just
I've
the
never been
simple
on an
noise
airboat.
and hours
Yeah.
they operate is the feedback we get.
Yeah.
Just a simple fact. And then them operating late in the evening while these homeowners at home.
Any other questions? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Chris, I know the next question's coming your way, so if you want to come on up and bring your other stuff. Commissioner Box, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Holbert.
Chris, I had a concern that I wanted to bring up. This is the right time. But previously we had talked about the boat ramps and paddlecraft. I know that's been an issue for a while now. And I wanted to know, as far as what's the process in putting something in place to give us management of the boat ramps, regardless if it's paddlecraft or as far as staggering the traffic for these folks. Kind of like we have management over WMAs as far as control and what the process is to put a rule in place to help us manage those.
Sure. As far as the boat ramps that are owned by the state of Tennessee and under the jurisdiction of the agency, you have full authority to control those. Now, it gets difficult when you're starting to say certain user groups can utilize them at certain times and others can't. With particular regard to the paddlecraft issue, I can tell you now, we dealt with 4 bills in the General Assembly this session that were aimed in some form or fashion about paddlecraft and about our authority. Some of the General Assembly members wanted to take our authority away. Others wanted to tweak it in certain ways. We actually came to an agreement and we passed a bill that is a slight tweak to the bill that passed last year that gave us the authority over the commercial operators. And that bill basically does 4 things. First, it puts any data or records that we receive from the paddlecraft operators under seal and only allows us to release that information in the aggregate. So for example, if we were looking at an operator on the Caney Fork, they give us their records for how many boats they launch and where they launch them. I could never release the information about a single outfitter. However, I could release the information when it comes to that body of water. So on the Caney Fork, there were this many boats that were launched at these boat ramps. The second thing it does is it creates a paddlecraft advisory council, much in the same vein that our commercial fishing advisory council works. It is not a regulatory group. It is not a board. It is a group of people that will help us as we go forward with trying to resolve some of these issues. It also puts a moratorium, or that's probably not the right word. It does not allow us to promulgate any rules relative to fees until July 1st of 2021, which in all honesty is probably about as early as the agency would have ever recommended the passage of any potential fees, because we want to get some data about the issues that we're dealing with from these outfitters. And because of the timing, we're really not going to be able to start gathering that data for a full boating season until 2020. And because of the way the rules work, July 2021 would really be the earliest opportunity I think we'd have to institute any fees. And I said that it did 4 things, and I've told you 3 of them, and I'm blanking on what the 4th one is. It allows the agency to consider multi-year permits. So, but at the end of the day, our authority to regulate that community stayed intact, and the rule that you passed in January will go into effect as soon as Governor Lee's Executive Order 5 expires, which is coming in a week or 10 days. So 90 days from when that expiration of Executive Order 5, we will have a rule in place that creates a permit for commercial outfitters. They're going to have to be permitted from us. They'll get that permit at no cost. They then have to maintain those records of how many boats they launch and where they launch them. That's going to give the agency an opportunity to really hone in on which boat ramps are getting the most traffic, where do we need to take additional steps, and also potentially get to a plan that has a price tag on it of what money it might cost to fix some of these issues. I think once we have that price tag, we're going to go back to the General Assembly and have more conversations with the industry to say, how do you want us to pay for these? Do you want us to pay for these through the institution of user fees? Do you want to look at a general appropriation? How do we go about doing that? So in the meantime, the first step that I'm going to take as soon as this legislature is adjourned, as soon as this new bill is signed by the governor, which it should be sitting on his desk, is we'll form that advisory council, and we'll continue the conversations that we started last year. And we're probably I'm going to want to drill down on some specific waterways, the ones that we all know are kind of generating the most conflict, whether that's the Caney Fork, the Harpeth, the Little Red, the Buffalo, and start to talk with these outfitters that are operating there and say, what can we do right now without more regulation, without fees? What are some things that we can do to try to make these experiences on the waterways better for everybody? And I hope to have the permit system fleshed out, and by the end of this boating season, start to pilot that with a few operators. And then by January of 2020, be ready to do a full year's worth of this data collection with an eye towards 2021 to come back with potentially additional regulations or even potential fees at that time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, Chris, just stay up there. We're going to enter into a rulemaking hearing. This is a rulemaking hearing before the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission to consider amending Rule 1660-01-34, which deals with rules and regulations for chronic waste disease counties. My name is Kurt Holbert, and I will conduct the hearing. I'm going to call on Assistant Director Richardson.
Thank you, Chairman Holbert, members of the Commission. Here before you today with a rule relative to chronic wasting disease. For those commissioners that were here in December, this is in fact a permanent rule that will replace the emergency rule that you all adopted relative to really two things, that being the transport restrictions on carcass and carcass parts, and also the supplemental feeding concerns that we have within chronic wasting disease areas. A permanent rule can only be effective for 90 days, and this rule will take the place of that emergency rule and become permanent moving forward. The first part of the rule establishes, and I guess I should preface to say the whole design of this rule is to make it dynamic. Rulemaking is very difficult, not difficult, but time consuming. The average time to promulgate a rule through its full process is going to be somewhere between 9 and 12 months. They're not easily amended, they're not easily adopted. So we wanted to make sure, as we considered how to address some of these issues that had to go in rule, that we could make this rule dynamic, where if we had a new county added to the zone or we got new information relative to CWD, that this rule would adapt on its own so that we weren't constantly in this rulemaking procedure to have to amend things. And so the first thing we're doing in this rule is establishing what is a positive county and what is a high-risk county when it comes to chronic wasting disease. The positive county is pretty self-obvious. It's if there is a documented, confirmed case of chronic wasting disease within a county, it becomes a positive county. Currently, we have 3 of those: Fayette, Hardeman, and Madison. In addition to positive counties, we want to put some restrictions and regulations in place relative to high-risk counties. And a high-risk county is defined in this rule as any county that has a confirmed positive within 10 miles of its border. So in line with some of Commissioner Ripley's questions yesterday, it doesn't necessarily mean that every contiguous county to a positive county will be high risk, but it will be based specifically on the geographic location of where that confirmed positive was harvested. The rule also establishes that we will maintain a map of what is a positive county, what is a high-risk county, and make that available to the public. When it comes to the restrictions that are put in place with this rule, the first thing that we're dealing with is the exportation of potentially infectious material or dangerous parts of an animal. And many of you are probably familiar with our old importation rules, which still exist. Previously, if you were going to import an animal, say that you had harvested in Colorado, which is a CWD positive state, there was a certain criteria that we commonly referred to as A through E of things that you had to do in order to bring back deboned meat, antlers, skull plates, and those types of things. What we're doing is applying those very same standards to exportation of carcass and carcass parts from CWD positive counties. And essentially this rule would say that you cannot take any parts of a whitetail harvested in one of these counties from that county unless you meet the criteria of A through E. We also are putting some restrictions on the exportation from high-risk counties. The same A through E criteria would apply. However, now this is where it gets a little bit complicated. And the rule, as I explain it to you, I want to make clear that this is not the way we're going to roll it out to the public, because the technical nature of the rule, it has to be written this way. But when we go to explain what this rule says to the public, we fully expect to have graphs and charts and things that make this a little more easy to understand. But essentially what we are saying is if you harvest a deer in a positive county, no parts of that deer can come out of that county regardless, unless it meets the criteria A through E. If you harvest a deer in a high-risk county, you would be able to take that whole carcass from a high-risk county to another high-risk county, or from a high-risk county to a positive county. But in no circumstances, if you went from a high-risk county to a positive county, could that carcass then leave the positive county. So for example, with our current map, if you were in McNairy County and you wanted to go to Shelby County, which are both high risks with Fayette and Hardeman in between, you would not be able to drive straight from McNairy County across Hardeman County and Fayette County and into Shelby County, because the minute you take that carcass into a positive county, that carcass will be treated as if it was harvested in those counties. Now, if you wanted to go from high risk to high risk, that's going to be okay with a whole carcass. And the reason behind this is we don't want to overburden hunters. There's only certain processors in certain places, there's only certain taxidermists in certain places, and we want to make sure that hunters are able to do what they need to do to get this meat handled, but still provide the most protection we can for this potentially infectious material. So high risk to high risk, okay. High risk to positive, okay. Positive to anywhere else, not okay. High risk to any county with no designation, not okay. And again, we'll have some charts and some things, flow charts and things that make that much more easily digestible and understood as we get towards the development of our hunting guide. The final part of this rule, within positive counties and high-risk counties, we are putting a ban or restrictions on feeding. Basically, the placement of grain, salt products, minerals, and other consumable natural manufactured products is prohibited unless you meet one of the very specific exceptions in the rule. Those exceptions being if the feed is placed within 100 feet of an existing residence or occupied building, feed placed in such a manner as to reasonably exclude access by deer, feed placed as part of a wild hog management effort authorized by the agency, or feed and minerals present solely as a result of normal agricultural practices, normal forest management practices, or crop and wildlife food production practices. Mr. Chairman, with that explanation of the rule, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Do I hear a motion for approval? Do I hear a second? Any discussion? Any questions or comments from the public?
This makes it permanent, correct?
Yes. No questions? Danette, if you will call the roll. A yes vote will be in favor of it. Of course, a no vote will be against it.
Angie Box,
Yes.
Brian McLaren,
Yes.
Dennis Gardner,
Yes.
Jimmy Granberry,
Yes.
Steve Jones,
Yes.
Connie King, Jim Ripley,
Yes.
Tony Sanders,
Yes.
James Stroud,
Yes.
Kent Woods,
Yes.
Tommy Woods,
Yes.
Hank Wright, Kurt Holbert.
Yes. Thank you, Danette. The motion, or the rule 1660-01-34 passes unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission.
Thank you. Anybody on the commission got anything else? I want to thank Lance Ryder, Jeff Martin, Amy. You guys did a wonderful job with everything here, getting it fixed up. Kim Wilson, thank you again for your wonderful hospitality. And Connie and Angie.
Oh, yes, but there's a little leftover tenderloin up there, where there was. I don't know if it's all gone. Is it all gone?
Did you see Officer Barker standing there with it dripping?
I didn't get my share. Good man.
Anyway, and again, Officer Barker, thank you for leading us. We've got some wonderful employees in the agency in every division, but I truly mean that. Brian Thompson, I think he's stepped out, but he's in the back. No reason for him to come out. I know he's a big speaker, but anyway, Brian, thank you for your contribution to this agency over the last 34 years. Anybody else got anything to say? Acting Director Wilson, do you have anything to say? No, Mr. Chairman. All right. Do I hear a motion? We adjourn. All in favor, leave.